Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's live webinar, International Expert Roundtable, Post-COVID-19 Challenges and Changes. My name is Andrea Karadzic, and I'm the organizer of this webinar. Mrs. Andrea Morgan is supporting me on the back end as the co-organizer. Before we get started, I want to go over a few points so you know how to best practice in this webinar. You will see on your own computer desktop in this upper right corner a control panel with 3 tabs. It's audio, handouts, and chat or questions. Use the white arrow in the orange box to expand and collapse your control panel. By default, you will listen in via your computer speakers system. If you prefer to participate via phone, simply select phone in the tab audio and dial in the information which is displayed on the right side. If you cannot hear us, please contact us in the chat window. Furthermore, as a participant, you are automatically muted to avoid background noise. You also have the option to write us and to send us some text questions in your chat window by typing it in the last tab of your control panel. You can send in your questions at any time during the whole webinar, and I will forward all questions to our moderator, Luce, and all questions will be addressed at the end of this webinar. All unanswered questions will be answered afterwards in the wrap-up. In addition, you will find a PDF file in your handouts tab at the end. It's in the middle of your control panel. And so there is a summary of the whole countries which are participating today and also the contact information. Please note that the live webinar is being recorded and made to you available afterwards. So these are all organizational points from my side, and I would like to hand over to our speakers and my colleagues, Luce, Lauren Edson, Mathias Mueller, Sergei Fershinin, and Klaudia Kamińska-Kiempa. Have a pleasant talk.
So good afternoon from my side as well. While my colleagues are joining me, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Luce. I'm a German tax advisor and partner in our international tax law practice here in our head office in Nuremberg, and I will guide you through the next 45 minutes. We already have a whole series of different webinars at Rödl Partner. With our International Expert Roundtable, we want to bring together colleagues from different countries and different disciplines and discuss current topics together with you. To start with, we have chosen a topic that concerns us all worldwide and still on a daily basis, COVID-19. However, we do not want to focus on the current crisis management, but rather look ahead. What's next after the pandemic? We want to take a look on how individual countries are coming out of the crisis, at the so-called new normal. We would like to have a look at the opportunities and risks for your companies and what actions you may already need to take. For that purpose, we have brought together the following colleagues: Lauren Edson from our Chicago office in the US, Mathias Mueller from our Chinese desk in Munich, Sergei Fershinin from our Moscow office, and Klaudia Kamińska-Kiempa from our Krakow office. I would like you to introduce yourself in a few sentences. Due to our tight time schedule, I would like to get right into the topic and link the introduction with the first question. The US, China, Russia, and also Poland are important trading partners for Germany. We are all slowly seeing light at the end of the pandemic tunnel, and I think we are all interested in how your countries are coming out of the crisis. What is the current situation in your country? Maybe Mathias for China, would you like to start? You're on mute.
Yeah, excuse me. So, hi, Anna. Thanks a lot for passing the word to me. Yeah, China is doing pretty well. Actually, we help the world to recover from Corona and COVID-19, and there's hardly a day where we cannot hear good news from China. So we have a 60% increase compared to last year, which obviously was easy to achieve because last year was very bad in the first couple of months. But China is expecting a 6% gross profit growth for this year, so this is quite good. And there is no corona death or anything at the moment in China. China is back to normal. So I would say from a Chinese point of view, it's time to be in China now, and things got normal pretty well. And I would like to hand it back to Anna.
Thanks. So Klaudia is next on my screen. So why don't we stick with almost the same continent and switch to Poland? How is it looking in your country?
In fact, good morning, everyone. In fact, in Poland, we have a third wave of coronavirus ahead of us. So we deal with the crisis on a daily basis. Although the situation is very dynamic, I must admit that we are handling it quite well as a country. Economic indicators are surprisingly optimistic. Also, the level of unemployment is not as bad as expected in March 2020. As a light in these dark times, I can definitely name the number of people who have been already vaccinated, about 10% of the population with the first dose of vaccine, and about 4% with 2 doses. Most businesses in Poland are opened, however, with some limitations, which apply mainly to restaurants, fitness studios, events. In places with the highest number of COVID-19 infections, also hotels and shopping malls are closed or about to be closed. We truly believe this third wave will be the last one. That is why we must take smart and careful steps so that this third wave would not lead to a complete shutdown throughout Poland.
Thank you, Klaudia. Yeah, I think Russia also started pretty early to vaccinate their people. So how is the situation look like in Russia? Are you as hopeful as Poland?
Hello to everyone. So we are quite optimistic. So the number of COVID cases is dropping according to our statistics. In the last months, we have the so-called lockdown, but only a light version. So it means stores and restaurants are open, and but with physical distances and hygienic and sanitary requirements. Then vaccination campaign is underway, but it goes very slowly, unfortunately. Vaccinated to this moment only 2.2% of the total population. Some people do not trust this vaccine and Sputnik V, unfortunately, and there is no real advertising campaign for it, no priority for certain groups to be vaccinated. The impact of to the Russian economy was quite hard. The GDP last year was minus 3.1, and but forecast for this year is quite better, even better than the global economy. We expect plus 3.5%, and yeah, I mean the crisis has hit some regions in Russia, but the unemployment was actually only for some economic activities like construction, manufacturing, retail, and hospitality services. There was recently a survey made by German Chamber of Commerce abroad among the German businesses in Russia, and they evaluated themselves as good, 37%, and only 11% as bad. So we're quite optimistic.
That's good to hear. So let's cross the ocean into the US. How is it going in the US, Lauren?
Thanks, Anna. Things are definitely looking up when you compare to a year ago. Obviously, with everything starting to spring up with COVID, things were looking very bleak, and you know, we had very high unemployment numbers at that time, and of course, COVID cases were rising very sharply at various points throughout 2020. But now, as we're nearing the end of the first quarter of 2021 already, things are certainly looking up. We have COVID cases and deaths are leveling off to a better point. We have very high hopes for vaccination efforts. I believe about 19% of the population in the US has gotten at least one dose of the vaccine already. So there's a renewed optimism, surely. Thanks to many of the government aid packages that have been passed over the past year, one of which was just passed yesterday by our Congress and will be signed into law tomorrow. I think we've been able to head off a lot of the worst of it that we thought would happen perhaps back at this time in 2020, especially as far as unemployment goes. Things are certainly not perfect, and there's different industries that are suffering more than others. Obviously in the travel, hospitality, restaurant industries are still struggling, but at this point, the aid that the government is going to sign, or that the president will sign into law tomorrow, is really trying to target those industries, and especially also the startup businesses, to aid them and keep the people on the payroll, which has really been the focus all along.
Thank you, Lauren. In Germany, we have seen that the economy is changing significantly as a result of COVID-19. On the one hand, we have decentralization and digitalization of our working environment. But on the other hand, we also see that the crisis is being used to intervene and strengthen trends. For example, in the automotive industry, alternative drive systems are strongly promoted. So my question to you is, what does this look in your country? How are companies being supported in the transition to the new normal? And what opportunities and risks might arise from these chances? Maybe let's start in Russia this time. Sergey.
In Russia, the support is mainly focused on the small and medium-sized enterprises. Among our they are mostly our clients, actually. Since the change of law of last year, daughter companies of foreign businesses can also be considered as small and medium enterprises and be registered as small and medium enterprises and get this profits and preferences. For small businesses and medium-sized businesses, they can get deferral on loan payments up to 6 months, but only in the industries which were hit most by the crisis, and leisure, hospitality, transportation, travel. They can get discounted loans. They can get even 0% interest loans for businesses in hard hit industries to pay salaries. They can have low interest loans for resumption of their activities, and there are also some companies called systematically important, so most important for Russian economy. The list is made by the Russian government. They can get also very low interest loans. So the rent holiday is also possible for tenants who have been hit by the crisis. So there are also some preferences in government contracts. So generally, the trend in Russian economy is going on modernization of industry and localization of production in Russia, and it means there are good chances actually for our clients to localize now in Russia.
Mm-hmm. Good to hear. Matthias, can you see the same trends in China as well, or different ones?
Well, the good thing on China is we have a 5-year plan, and we are just in the in the steps of having the new 5-year plan, the 14th actually of the People's Republic of China, being finalized these days. And I think today the president gave a final announcement, and China is attracting, in particular, IT, biotechnology, but also renewables. I mean, we are a little bit on a run with the US, Lauren. You know, we want to be carbon neutral in China by 2060. To achieve this, we have to put literally compared to with Europe. We have to stop the whole industry in Europe for one or couple of years, yeah, and switch to renewables. Yeah, this is a tremendous task. And today there was a news on Bloomberg that China put on wind energy turbines in 1 year as many as there is in Germany in total. Yeah, so if you are in this business, regardless if you are a German company, a Polish company, or wherever you are, go to China. It's now the time to be there.
Thank you, Matthias. Yeah. So Lauren, Matthias already named the US. So and you already said that you have a huge aid package passed yesterday, which will be law today, tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah. So what does this mean?
Yeah, so the past year, we've seen some of the largest aid packages passed by our Congress in history. So the bill that passed the Congress yesterday is just the latest. We've had over the past year, the main focus that everybody has been talking about in the US as far as support for companies during COVID is the Paycheck Protection Program loans, the PPP loans. Which have been a huge assistance to many small businesses in the US and many of our clients as well. Those were aimed at providing payroll support mostly, but also support for rent or other operating expenses. And the great thing with those is companies who use those loans to pay such eligible payroll expenses actually have those loans forgiven. So it is essentially free money from the government to keep the people on their payrolls. And they also get to deduct those expenses on their tax returns. So there's really a double benefit there that that was implemented by the government. There's also a number of credits that are being offered at the current time for, again, that aim of keeping employment. So there's employee retention credits for companies that are paying their employees. That was expanded greatly through the Consolidated Appropriations Act, which was passed just in early January. So that has now been extended and will be extended again by the legislation signed into law tomorrow by President Biden, the American Rescue Plan. So that will be extended now through the end of 2021. So again, just all these programs intended to help smaller businesses. It's really aimed at businesses with fewer than 500 employees to keep their workers on the payroll and try to stave off any high unemployment. The main concern with all these aid packages at this point is the potential for inflation. But I think that is being monitored closely, and it's relatively small concern as compared to the bigger goals at hand. So yeah, there's certainly a lot of great aid packages that have come out in the last year, and we're hoping that these just help keep our economy humming, and I think it's achieving that so far to the extent possible with the current crisis.
Good. So Klaudia, Poland is missing. So what is the situation there? Do you have similar aid packages? How is the transition to the new period is going? Do you have any economies which might not be there after the crisis anymore?
Poland is definitely one of the biggest beneficiaries of funds from the European Union. So at this point, I believe this is a great chance for new companies to benefit from that support. The majority of these funds will be addressed to the small and medium-sized enterprises, companies operating in the field of IT and new technologies. The current situation has also already changed our habits. The reduction of face-to-face contact between people has caused a growth of interest in e-commerce. And in my opinion, in the very near future, the development of online selling will be a challenge, but also an opportunity for companies. The risks I see is certainly remote work. On one hand, the legal regulations in Poland regarding the topic are not complete and will probably be subject of the new legal regulations. On the other hand, remote work will probably cause a decrease in demand for office spaces, which may have a negative impact on the office market in Poland, which is highly developed.
Thank you, Claudia. Since I'm a tax consultant, I always listen up when I hear the word taxes, and you already mentioned it a couple of times. So we have talked a lot about funding measures. However, we all know that these funding measures must also be counter-financed at some point. In Germany, this discussion is definitely driven by the upcoming federal elections, but even without those, I guess that there would be an increasing discussion on tax increases and other counter-financing measures. Can you see this trend in your country as well? Are there already concrete plans? Maybe Sergey for Russia?
Yeah, Russia has adopted actually 3 state support packages and action plans to revitalize its economy, and the total cost was 110 billion euros. The counter financing is actually, we can feel it right now by introducing some restrictions on preferences for double taxation agreements for interest, dividends, license fees, but affected are currently only the jurisdictions which are normally used for taxation schemes for investments in Russia, like Cyprus, Malta, Switzerland. So Germany will have further its preferences in taxation, and according to double taxation agreement between Russia and Germany. And we have an increase of income tax. Now we have a progressive income tax between 13 and 15%.
Okay, thank you. So it's good to hear that at least the German-Russian double tax treaty remains untouched.
It's safe, yes, it's safe.
Good. And Claudia, in the last couple of years, I had several times I had contact with the Polish tax authorities, and it was not always a pleasant conversation with them. So
I can imagine that.
So I know that times changed already, and in the Polish tax situation, I would say. But are there any other tax increases or counter financing measures planned?
In Poland, the situation is a little bit different than in Russia or in Germany, because in Poland, the government is introducing new taxes instead of increasing the existing ones. As an example, I can name sugar tax. The price of goods, especially sweetened beverages, are way higher than in 2020 and in compared to other countries, which means that, for example, for a Coke, we have to pay more in Poland than in Germany, probably. We have also the corporate income tax on limited partnership. On the other hand, we should pay attention to the current practice of tax offices, which try to change the existing interpretations of the law favorable for taxpayers and punish even for the smallest tax offenses. So this is how does it look like in Poland from the tax law perspective.
Okay. So Lauren, since you just had a bill passed, does this bill also say something about tax increases or counter measures?
Yeah, it hasn't quite gotten that far yet, but it certainly is laying the groundwork, I think, for future tax legislation to come from the Biden administration and from the Democratic Congress. Biden has mentioned during his campaign that he wishes to raise the corporate income tax rate in the U.S. from its current rate of 21% up to 28%. So that might sound like a fairly large increase, and it is, but it's still certainly lower than the pre-Tax Cuts and Jobs Act corporate income tax rate, which we had prior to 2018, which is at 34%. So, trying to find something in the middle there to try and finance some of these large aid packages that we have been passing over the last year. Biden also has expressed interest in increasing the individual income tax rate back up to 39%. That was lowered to 37% under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So yes, there's certainly some potential on the horizon for increased tax rates in the U.S. As far as other measures that Biden is hoping to impose over the next couple of years, he certainly has an interest in increasing American production. So he, would like to offer tax credits to companies who are producing in America via a 10% Made in America tax credit, and then at the same time penalizing those those companies that are offshoring jobs by imposing a penalty for that type of activity. So trying to use both the carrot and the stick to incentivize and increase the production capacity in the U.S. So it's certainly a different outlook than the previous president. So we'll see how far Biden can get done. I expect most of his agenda he will try to get pushed through in the first 2 years before the next round of midterm elections in the Congress, since they do have a slight majority in both houses at the moment.
Okay, at least if it comes as you just told us, that at least the US won't be a low tax country for Germany anymore.
Right.
Matthias, does the 5-year plan in China say anything about taxes?
No, I don't want to say anything because there's a lot of paperwork which I haven't looked through all incomplete at the moment, but at least not to my knowledge there's any announcement that we want to increase any kind of taxes. And actually I don't believe that this will happen, because you have to see, we now think of China, of Shanghai, big skyscrapers, modern factories and so on and so forth, but there's still a lot of very poor people in China who, and we speak about 300 to 400 million, if not more. And then we have a bracket of another, maybe let's say 200, 300 million who are, well, maybe not poor, but by no means middle class. And what the richness of China and what we see now is really the affluent people, and even then affluent is, we should use carefully. If we look on an aggregate point of view, Shanghai has a gross revenue of Spain, but in Shanghai there's people who are poor and then there are really rich people. So no way that the Chinese government would increase the taxes. However, maybe they introduce some taxes to those who can afford it, like foreigners living in China. So if you are an expat in China, you should look and maybe consult your tax expert, and if there's some changes coming for you which you have to adjust, maybe on real estate. First, 30 years ago, all real estate was owned by the government. Then the government gave loan on very good terms to the people so that you can buy their homes. And now a home in Shanghai is more expensive maybe than New York or Chicago. And this gives a lot of speculation, and this is not in the interest of the Communist Party. So certainly there will be a kind of tax coming, maybe also gift tax and inheritance tax, because why not? That's my point of view. So Anna, that's maybe. Yeah.
Thank you. We have gotten now quite a few ideas on how the environment might change in the post-COVID-19 era. I guess what our participants are most interested in is, of course, what does this mean for them? What does it mean for our clients? Is there any need for immediate or also indirect action, you think? Matthias, maybe for China?
Well, I think you have to be there now. This is really the most important lesson which you take away from today. Be there now, but it's difficult to go there. So if you have a factory in China, ask someone who can have a close look what's going on in your factory. The AHK is offering virtual, Googles to look, but I think you need to look into the financials, you need to look on your bank account, and maybe you send someone who you can really trust to your factory and look what's going on if you can't be there. There's still a quarantine time of 2 weeks or up to 4 weeks, so that makes it difficult. If you're not there in China, prepare to go there. Change your internal organization wherever this is, Poland, Russia, Germany, and make sure you have enough Chinese-speaking people on board and start going there. That's what I can only tell to everyone. Yeah.
Sergey, is this also true for Russia?
Yeah, I think it is all very important for our clients to look for new opportunities in Russia now. So especially in terms of localization in industry and the food industry, for example, or e-commerce, there are good chances still for machinery producers, and probably we would recommend for the companies who are already existing on the Russian market to check whether they're eligible for the status of a small or medium-sized enterprise since the change of law last year. Probably they don't know about these opportunities, and in this case they would benefit from all the aid programs I already mentioned today. And our second recommendation would be, do not overestimate all the political risks we are hearing of right now. There's political tensions and diplomatic tensions between Russia and the EU, Russia and the US, and because the European Union is still the most important economic partner for Russia, and there are still lots of new investments from Europe in Russia. The localizations projects of Western businesses are underway in Russia, and we will be glad to support them.
Klaudia, what do you think are the biggest to-dos for Poland currently for our clients?
Definitely enterprises hit by coronavirus in the coming period will have to account for the support which they received from the government, from the country. Usually the most important factor is maintaining employment on an appropriate level. So this is definitely what our clients need to look for if they know that they are going to account for the state support they received. Using this occasion, I think it is also worth to say a few words about the new program introduced in Poland, which maybe has not so much to do with the COVID itself, however, can mean extra costs for employer. At the beginning of 2021, the next stage of implementation of employee capital plans has started. It concerns actually the last group of enterprises which employ less than 20 employees. This is a general program, but this is an obligation for employers. And what is maybe the most important, that the first agreement shall be concluded by 23rd of April this year. So this is the high time to start to act, just to avoid potential financial penalties for not observing the deadline.
Okay. So, Lauren, how about the US? What do you think is the most important thing currently?
Yeah, so currently, even before the pandemic, a really hot topic in the US as of late has been state and local taxation. And due to the pandemic and the fact that many of these state and local governments are so starved for funds and are so desperate to generate revenues in any way, I think that continues to be a really relevant factor of doing business in the US, especially with regards to now remote workforces. At the beginning of this pandemic, so many people were scrambling, trying to find viable arrangements for working, and many companies and employees were starting to work remotely for the first time, and not a lot of thought was able to be given to that process up front to streamline it and have the proper protocols in place for that type of environment. So now we're a year away from that. We've been doing this now, working remotely in many cases for close to a year. And now we're starting to think about what are the impacts of those actions. So, in many cases, having employees working remotely in different states could create nexus for companies that they may not have expected, and that could be for income tax, sales tax, payroll tax, even taxation of the employees themselves. So I think there's a lot of unintended consequences that probably haven't been considered up until now, just because everybody's focus was just on getting through 2020 and getting through the COVID pandemic. So I think state and local just continues to be at the forefront of the taxation landscape in the U.S. I'll also just say, we're a little bit far out now from our, big sales tax legislation or the Supreme Court case that was passed in 2018, the Wayfair case, which completely changed the sales tax landscape in the U.S. But that's still something that companies are struggling to comply with, and even foreign companies who are doing business in the U.S., even just by e-commerce or selling goods on Amazon, can have unexpected tax consequences in the U.S., which was never the case before Wayfair, really before. So I think state and local taxes are really the hot topic still, and will continue to be for a while.
Okay, Lauren, that's actually not good to hear. But I think that's something we just have to deal with.
The good news is that we're here to help, so we can always assist companies with the compliance and provide great recommendations. So yeah, that's the good news.
Right. That's right. That's the good news. Yeah. We're coming to the end of our discussions, and we received a few questions we can still address in the left minutes. So if you have questions, you still can key them in our chat, and we will address them. If we don't get to your questions, you will of course receive an answer from us afterwards. So we have received a few questions on China, so I will just get started with them, Matthias. I just read out loud. We need to send service engineers to China. Is it possible at the moment, or do we not get any visa?
Okay, it's possible to get a visa, but it's difficult, and it may take a couple of weeks, if not to say months, in particular because the Chinese general consul or the embassies are closed and give only very limited access to it. So that's the first burden you have to meet. And then the second thing is, if you send someone over, there's a mandatory at least 2 weeks quarantine in a Chinese hotel, which is quite hard to do. So, I mean, if you are in a kind of diet scheme or so, that may be helpful for you to go there. Some of our colleagues just done it, and they said it was good for them, yeah, but it's probably not for everyone. And if you go further, I mean, let's say every flight is going to Shanghai, and then from Shanghai you may go further down to China in a kind of remote area, then there's a second 2 weeks quarantine time. So it's difficult right now. Yeah.
Okay, possible but difficult. Okay, let me see. Another question on financing. How can we finance our Chinese subsidiary? Are there any support facilities available from the Chinese government?
Okay, there's little support from a Chinese government unless you really are in a kind of greenfield investment. Most of the time, first of all, you have to see China is doing pretty well. It has released a couple of, during the Corona time, a lot of social payments and the rent, but now the support is limited. If you go to China now, there are certain credit schemes, some hidden support available, and you really need to know in which kind of business you are, what is the benefit for China, and if you are in a kind of wanted area like biotech, IT, or whatsoever, green renewables, there's certainly a way you get a good support. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know just from the past, from my experience, that it was quite okay getting loans, for example, from Germany to the Chinese subsidiary, but it was sometimes hard to get them paid back. Is this still the case, or are there any preference regimes currently?
Well, let's say it this way: you can get your money back, but it's difficult to refinance them the Chinese company. Yeah. The point is, if you as a shareholder provide a loan, then it's similar like equity. It's not a real loan which you can pay, and then it needs to be registered. And if you once use that loan and repay it, it's forfeited. And then the only way to get back into a new loan is via a capital increase. So that's why we usually recommend not to repay a loan, but to do dividend distributions or other ways to finance.
Okay. Just one question back on the visa situation, Matthias.
Okay.
How is the procedure in China if employees with valid visa but already had the coronavirus and now healthy again? So they would they have, or do they need just a positive antigen test, or do they have to go into quarantine as well?
Well, definitely they have to go into quarantine again. And before you start your traveling, I would highly recommend that you discuss it with the Chinese embassy. There's unfortunately a lot of bad news on this, that the Chinese do a lot of testing once you arrived in China. So I would be very careful. If I had corona, even if I'm not sick or if I'm have antibodies now, I would be very, very careful to go to China at this moment.
Okay, good to know. Lauren, one question on the US. How is the euro-US dollar impacting the short-term export level from Germany into the US for machine equipment and technology?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, so far we haven't seen a large impact, but that is certainly something that could affect the levels in the future. You know, we have most of our clients are importing machinery and equipment from Germany. You know, obviously those levels have been diminished recently due to COVID, just with not travel restrictions, but shipping restrictions and import restrictions and that kind of thing. So I don't think that we've really seen an impact yet from the exchange rate fluctuations, but it's certainly something to consider in the near term.
Okay. So we have 2 minutes left. So maybe one quick question to Poland, Klaudia. I don't know if you can answer it now, if not later. I think Lauren, you mentioned home office earlier, and I see the same, that a lot of people are working in the home office. Does the home office create a permanent establishment in Poland? Is this a risk when you now have your employees working from home as a foreign company? Is this an issue in Poland?
Well, in Poland, home office or remote work is now a very hot topic due to the current situation, the third wave, increasing number of COVID infection. More and more employees decide to work from home, and employers actually agree on that. Well, as I maybe not directly, but as I mentioned just before, remote work is kind of a challenge for employer, because at some point you need to control your employees, what they are doing during their working time. But of course, it also have this topic has also other picture, that not always you can actually control your employees, because you don't have a permanent control. You can of course take a look in a Skype or any other device that you are direct or indirect contacting with. However, it is harder to control what your employees are doing during their working day. I would say this is very convenient for employees, because they can work from their home. They don't have to, for example, get up very early. However, I can observe, well, in our environment in Poland, that more and more people are a little bit tired of working from home. And it's a little bit, well, I don't want to use the word devastating, but, well, tiring. Maybe this is the good word to describe it, of being all the time at the same spot, looking at the same walls. And this lack of direct contact with other people can be also very challenging for us.
Yeah. Thank you, Klaudia. So we are now at the end of our discussion round, our roundtable, and I would hand over to Andrea again.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Yeah, thank you all to my colleagues, and thank everyone who joined this webinar today. If you have any further questions, please contact our speakers. You find all contact information in our PDF file in the handouts tab. And our next International Expert Roundtable will be held in May 18th and 19th. You can see it on your slide. And we would appreciate it if you would fill after this webinar out our survey and give us your feedback. So thank you for joining us today, and hopefully we see you next time, and we wish you all a great day. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.